Welcome to On the Issues. I'm Phoenix City Councilwoman Thelda Williams. With our vast desert preserves and miles of trails, keeping hikers safe is a constant challenge. On today's show, we'll hear more about a new campaign to get hikers thinking about safety when they hit the trail. We'll also be learning more about neighborhood code compliance, what the city does and what residents can do to keep neighborhoods clean, safe, and up to code. But first, the city recently unveiled its Take a Hike, Do It Right campaign. It's designed to remind hikers about the need for basic safety measures when hitting our desert trails. To learn more, I'm here with Alonso Avitia from the Parks and Recreation Department and Shelley Jamison from the Fire Department. Shelley and Alonso, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thanks for asking us. This is an important topic.
So who gets to start off on what the campaign is all about?
Take a Hike, Do It Right. I will just jump right in there.
Okay.
Take a Hike, Do It Right is a great campaign. Like you mentioned, we have a great, amazing resource out there, which is our mountain parks and preserves. We have over 40,000 acres of mountain parks and preserves and over 200 miles of trail. What a great playground, correct? But part of the issue is to take a hike and do it right. People get out there, whether you're from Arizona or visiting, and you can get into trouble. You can find issues out there, of course, if you stray off the trail, if you are not taking care of the weather and making sure you're prepared for that. Hydrating is a big component as well. So all those little things that we know we should be listening to, it's a good reminder, and that's exactly what the Take a Hike, Do It Right campaign does. It's that friendly reminder of doing all those things to make sure you're safe out there.
And where do they get the information?
Our information is posted everywhere. It's posted at our trailheads. Right when you walk in, you get a slew of information at our trailheads, from the name of the trail to how difficult the trail is, and of course our safety signs. Our safety signs to remind people to hydrate, make sure they're at the right trail, to stay on the trail itself. So all that information is definitely at the trailhead, but also our website at phoenix.gov/parks. You can look up all our information on our trail system.
By chance, do you have that in local hotels or motels, resorts?
Yes. It's a great point to make because we do get a lot of visitors, and we obviously encourage that tourism, and we want people to have a memorable visit with Arizona. So yes, we do visit our resorts and our hotels, and our focus is going to be one of safety and education. So not only educate the staff, say the concierge or the staff at the hotel, to direct them in the right way and say this is what we're looking to do, remind them of some of those basic components of proper dress, make sure you're hydrated, those kind of things.
The right shoes?
The right shoes, not flip-flops, those kind of things. Where you're visiting, you're enjoying your time, and all of a sudden you decide you want to go on a hike, and you're kind of dressed the way you're dressed, and you just, again, step back, do a little checklist of yourself and those around you, and be safe out there.
I mean, you hear or read about some of the dumb stunts that people have pulled taking a hike. Recently, the one that we read in the paper, the guy with the flashlight that was hunting snakes?
With beer and a flashlight right up in the mountain parks. Aside from him, I think he was unique. I don't think anybody intends to go for a hike and get into trouble. Typically what we see is, and Alonso mentioned it, out-of-town visitors, and then we also see individuals who hike every day. It's not unusual for them, and they're very confident about it. So it's both ends of the spectrum. The Phoenix Fire Department responds on a variety of different calls when they're hiking. Some of it is heat exhaustion. Other times they can twist an ankle. Sometimes they become lost, and it can vary in degree from a very minor issue, not a big deal, to a fatality. So we take hiking very seriously. The Phoenix Fire Department works closely with Phoenix Parks and Rec, and also the Phoenix Police Department. You see our partners in the air. So we have an air unit, actually multiple, with Phoenix Police, and we train with them. We're able to hoist people out of the parks if they get into severe trouble, and we're unable to take them down via the Stokes basket. And we can also land the helicopter in certain parts of the parks.
I've seen those little tiny landing pads.
They're very tiny. Those pilots are extremely good at what they do.
How much does it cost to rescue somebody?
That's a very good question, Councilwoman Williams, and we have that question posed frequently. What does it cost to rescue somebody? The answer is it doesn't cost anything. It's the cost of doing business. Our fire department units, Phoenix Police, are all on duty. They're being paid an hourly rate to respond to anything from a man down, to a chest pain, to a house fire, or a technical rescue call, which is what you will see at these hiking events. The equipment that shows up at the parks that's technical rescue equipment. They come with ropes, baskets, harnesses, the ability to extract people from very difficult spots. But they're there on duty anyway, and those same units will respond to house fires, ill children, drownings, etc. So they're literally paid for. The fire department, Parks and Rec, all of your city services are part of the taxpayers, what they pay taxes in.
So if I was stupid, fell down the mountain, you had to come in with a helicopter and rescue me, I don't have to pay anything?
You don't have to pay anything, but if we take you to the hospital in the ambulance or rescue as we call them, then there would be a cost incurred. And depending on the severity of the injury, well, it's a basic injury, obviously it doesn't cost as much because of the medical attention that's given and the level. But the thing we don't want people to do is not call if they get into trouble. So if they're lost, or they twist an ankle, or they're having chest pain, or they suddenly become dizzy because it's too hot and they haven't hydrated well enough, we don't want them not to call 911. We're there to help. We're an emergency service, and we work with parks directly. They'll close the park, they stage, they work with us directly. They're parks officers, we talk on the same radio channels, so it's a very good system, and it's meant to work, and it works well, so we encourage people, if they get in trouble, to use it.
You know, I've never, in all my years in government, ever heard of a complaint of poor service in the mountains and needing rescue. I've only heard compliments on how well it's executed, transport happens, the service is superb.
I'm happy to hear that. And again, I think it's our partnerships, working together.
Well, we're going into some hot weather.
Yes, ma'am.
We've had beautiful spring.
We have beautiful spring, and now we're getting into those triple digits.
And so how much water should I take if I'm going to go up? And what time of day should I plan to do it?
You know, our systems are rated. There are different systems from easy to moderate to very difficult to extremely difficult. So you want to take that into consideration. You definitely want to start hydrating the day before, if not obviously going into the hike. So if you're taking a bottle of water, when you go out and you're halfway done, that's the end of your hike, come back to us with that half water is basically the concept. You go up halfway, come back. So you want to make sure you have enough water for that purpose.
So what you go up with, you better have that much to come back with.
Exactly,
Gotcha.
Exactly. Halfway, and then you head back is our goal, and we want people to be safe.
You've probably seen the camelbacks that people wear. It's got the water bladder, the system in back, and then you can just sip from the tube. Those are very handy,
Absolutely.
easy to wear, and the weight is distributed well, so your hands are free. So if you stumbled and fell, you have the ability to catch yourself. You mentioned hiking shoes before, or perhaps you did. One of the things that we suggest is that those hiking shoes have ankle support, because it's very easy, especially coming down. That's where people tend to get hurt. They rarely run up the mountain, but they'll run down or hurry and they lose their footing. Ankle support makes a big difference.
I hadn't thought about that, but I'm sure you're absolutely correct.
I'll add one more, since I'm pale-skinned as well as you. Sunscreen is a big deal. Wear a hat, wear sunglasses, cover yourself with sunscreen, or wear the wicking clothes that allow sweat to wick off your skin. They keep you cool, but they're long sleeve. Again, protect yourself. So it's not just the sun and the heat. You see bees, wild critters are up there in the mountains.
Absolutely. And the more you stay on trail and you stay on that trail, you'll stay safer if you stay on the trail. That's where you do encounter some of the nature's friends out there. So you want to stay on trail to all the points you made. So those checklists of yourself, and make sure you're hydrated, make sure you have a cell phone, make sure you're hopefully hiking with somebody. If
How
not,
about your dog?
That is a great point to make.
Speaking of critters.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So along with the weather, we obviously our man's best friend wants to be with us, but some of our trail system is not the best, especially in the weather that we have now with the triple digits. They really do react differently to the heat, so we want to make sure they're safe along with yourself. So keep that in mind as well as you're ready to go out to a hike. Is this appropriate hike? They will go with you until the end there, and they really can't obviously let you know when they're in trouble or distress, and it's just really something that just quick onset, so we want to take care of our four-legged friends.
Right, because I would imagine if you were going to do that, you want to make sure that you carried enough water or had enough to supply the animal, and I would think their paws would get burned.
Absolutely.
And you can buy the little paw protectors, and they're also collapsible dishes that you can purchase and put in that camelback backpack along with a snack, some trail trail mix or nuts, something simple. You don't want to have too much to eat before you hike on the trail, but just enough to keep your blood sugar up. And same thing with your pet, if you bring your pet with you, and keep a close eye on them.
Okay, so what's your absolute best advice, and how do you keep reminding people that it doesn't make any difference whether it's your first trip out or your 10,000th trip out? You have to be prepared.
When you take a hike and do it right, you really just do that quick self-evaluation. No one is going to take better care of yourself and understand what kind of condition you're in than yourself. So put yourself in check to know where you're going, what you want to do, what you want to accomplish, but be honest with yourself. And when you're taking a hike, you want to do it right, and you want to be able to come back and enjoy the rest of the day, of course.
And don't take it lightly. It is a very serious sport. The trails are breathtakingly beautiful. The sunrise in the morning, sunset in the evening. Watch those things. If you're going out in the evening, you don't want the sun to set and still be on the trail, because everything looks different after dark. In the morning, it's a little bit different because the sun's coming up. But take it seriously. Use the right equipment. Let somebody know where you're going and when you intend to be back. And if you get into trouble, call 911. That's what we're there for.
I think that's excellent advice. I have been on patrol with the Phoenix police in the helicopter and have seen people up there at twilight. And I always wonder, when they're on the very apex of that mountain, how did they see to get down?
Frequently they don't. It's not unusual for us to be searching for hikers after dark, and typically, again, so with our partners in parks and also PD carries huge spotlights on their helicopters, and they can light up the park very easily along with our ground crews. We communicate, and it's typically simple to find lost hikers, but it's not a situation you want to get into. Don't be hiking after dark. If there's no moon, it's very difficult to see on those trails. You can fall, get lost. It's not something to take lightly.
I would imagine that's probably true in the desert too.
Everything looks different, right? The light changes. So
Absolutely.
you've probably been on a hike where you go out and everything looks one way, but on the way back you're thinking, is this the way I went? So that's the phenomenon.
So again, with the take a hike, just be preventative. You want to understand what the hours of operation for that facility are. They're there for a reason. They're there for a purpose, to try to be a safe hike and a safe return. So after hours, past 7 p.m., it gets a little more difficult. So keep an eye on that as well. Of course, try to hike within the hours of operation.
And I'm certainly not in the business of advertising for anybody, but there are a number of outlets in town where you can go and purchase the correct hiking boots, the right socks so you don't wear a blister on your hike, the correct shirts, hats, sunscreen, sunglasses, the water backpack.
Oh. Well, thank you both for being here today and talking about this, because it's very important, because we hear about it all summer long. Someone needs to be rescued or someone gets hurt. I am delighted that you have a new program. You're really promoting this, because safety is so important. And as always, the fire department works well with all the other departments, well known as rescue people, and do an exceptional job. But thank you both for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Up next, we'll be learning more about code compliance and how it keeps our neighborhoods blight-free.
What would you do if you saw a dog, a cat, or a horse that looked like this? Animal cruelty and neglect is a crime that needs to be reported.
I'm Councilwoman Thelda Williams, here with my rescued pets, Henry and Cheyenne.
And I'm Councilman Michael Nowakowski, asking for your help.
If you ever suspect animal cruelty, call Crime Stop, the Arizona Humane Society, or the Sheriff's Office.
Animal cruelty is a crime.
And together we could stop it. The city's Neighborhood Services Department enforces a long list of codes to keep Phoenix communities free of blight. And I'm here with Darcy Kober of the Neighborhood Services Department. We're going to discuss how codes are enforced in the city neighborhoods, and more importantly, how residents can get neighborhood violations addressed. Darcy, thank you for joining me today.
It's great to be here.
How many calls do you think we get a year? Thousands?
Thousands. I'd say probably over 1,000 a month, more than likely. I know that we address through blight enforcement. We do about between 80,000 sites a year for graffiti, and we address about 50,000 blight cases a year for neighborhood issues.
I know we're always, every day we get calls or emails on some condition in a neighborhood. And especially now that it's getting warmer and people tend to go on vacation for a while and the weeds grow taller and taller. What can people do besides call my office?
They can always call the Neighborhood Services Department, and we also have a phone app that they can report violations to or potential violations. They can also give us a call, and we can send somebody out to take a look if it's a violation. They can also work with neighborhood associations. A lot of neighborhood associations will go and they'll help out neighbors in need that can't do it themselves. And they can also utilize our tool lending program. We have a tool lending program where folks can come and get the tools that they need to help maintain their properties. We have staff that receive complaints, and when we receive complaints, they go out and take a look. We open up a case and we go out and check the properties, and then we can also get back with residents if they prefer follow-up, and we'll take their name and their information and let them know the results of the inspection.
You know, you do a wonderful job, and I know we have a couple people that are assigned to District 1 that are exceptional, and I really, really appreciate it because they're tenacious, which as often has to be the case.
Sure.
Sometimes people comply almost instantly, and other times we both know it can take a long time. Could you take us through the process? Because one of the things is if they don't comply, property owners don't comply, and they just let it drag on. What's the compliance rules?
So we're lucky that over 90% of our cases are resolved voluntarily when we just send out a notice to the property owner letting them know the violations. So we get a good majority that are. But that other 10% or 7 to 10%, we work with property owners. We send out, so when a case comes into us, we open up a case and we route it to an inspector. Well, actually, prior to routing it to an inspector, if we haven't had a violation at that property in recent years, we will send a notice, which is called a pre-notification letter, out to the resident, lets them know that we received a complaint, and then an inspector will be out in the next 10 days to take a look. That gives them an opportunity to get ahead of it and take a look at it before we send somebody out. And oftentimes things are in compliance then by the time we send somebody out, and that's great. If not, we'll note the violation, and then we typically issue a notice of violation, which is a 15-day notice that allows them about 15 days to bring the property into compliance. We'll look for the violation that's complained upon in addition to what we refer to as top 8 violations. Those are things such as overheight grass and weeds, as you mentioned, inoperable vehicles, non-dust-proof parking. We make sure that we don't have open and vacant structures. We check for graffiti and other things like that. We'll send a notice on those items, give the opportunity for them to correct it, and then we'll schedule a re-inspection. When we come back out, if the property's in compliance and violations have been corrected, then we'll close out the case. But if not, then we have several options. So we can offer resources. If it's a resource issue, we have volunteer groups and other organizations that we work with that can sometimes step in and provide that assistance that's needed to either come in and cut the grass or trim the trim dead vegetation off of the trees, things like that. Or if folks are just unwilling to correct it, we have the opportunity or option to issue civil citations and also criminal capabilities. In addition to that, some violations we do abate, so open and vacant structures are obviously a priority for us. If the owner is not able or unwilling to secure that, then we'll bring in our abatement staff. We have a special team of inspectors that abate properties where we'll bring in a contractor and take care of it, and then we'll lien the property and record that notice.
How long would that take, that process?
It varies depending on the process. Our average for a standard case that goes beyond a notice of violation, it's about a month for resolution. But once a property goes into the court process, so if we do have to issue a civil citation or criminal charges, then it can take several months. When you issue a civil citation, the arraignment date is often about 30 days out. And so that's time consuming while you're waiting for that arraignment date. And then depending on how the resident pleads at that arraignment, if they request a hearing, it's set another 30 days out. And so it can take some time. And so sometimes residents think, boy, I reported that property a while back and nothing's happening. I don't see anything happening. And so they can always give us a call. We can let them know. They can also check the status of their case online, which is nice. So when they report a violation, we give them a case number. They can check the status of that on our website, and they can see where that case is at in the process, which is helpful, I think. Or they can call us and their inspector can update them anytime. But it can take time. That's why we really, really strive to get things taken care of voluntarily and outside of a court process. The goal is compliance. We want compliance. The court process, it can be effective for as a tool, but it also can be time consuming. So we do our best to try to provide as many resources as we can to be as expeditious as we can with closing out cases.
Well, recently in my district, we've had a couple very difficult cases, to put it mildly, that have taken more than a year since we first become aware of them. One, we just come to completion. Why would a case like that take so long? And how did you solve the problem?
So a couple of them we have been working on have been unique cases this year, and so we've had some pretty large cases with large amounts of material on a lot, several acres of material left behind from operations that came on and then vacated the property. And in those cases, we're not zoned for that activity, so they shouldn't necessarily be occurring on those lots. And so really we end up with more of a, how are we going to clean this up now that the operations have ceased? How do we compel folks to get those taken care of? And we did it through a series of things. So one particular case with a large amount of organic material that was left behind, we ended up issuing notices, which we received some response to, but not as quickly as we would have liked. And so we ended up issuing a series of civil citations. On one of them, we issued almost 100 citations.
What's that mean?
A civil citation, meaning it's like a what you would think of as like a ticket, I would say. So you would probably think most of it is like a speeding ticket, but instead it's a civil citation similar to that. And each citation has a number of charges. So you cite different violations on a citation. And so what that does is that brings the folks in. They come in then through the municipal court system, and they go before a judge. And so we present our inspector presents our case, or our prosecutor does, and then the defendant has an opportunity to do the same. And so with that one, we were able to enter into a settlement agreement with the property owner to agree to a timeline then, and to agree to a structure for fees, and so, or fines, I should say. And that was effective at finally bringing it into compliance. It was, like I mentioned, that we issued daily citations for quite some time.
And each one of those citations could cost you money, correct?
They are. A standard citation is between a minimum $100 fine up to $2,500 per charge. And in this instance, we settled on it ended up being $40,000 in fees. So it can add up pretty quickly if a property owner is not able or willing to bring the property into compliance.
I was delighted that it wasn't just your department that ended up getting involved.
Agreed. It took a lot of us together. Yes.
I mean, you really broke down the silos between the departments and packaged employees, so to speak, to address this problem. Could you mention
It did. We worked really closely with the prosecutor's office, with the Public Works Department, provided a great deal of insight. We even consulted with Maricopa County, with the Office of Environmental Programs. We brought a lot of us together. A lot of staff, even just from within our own department, different expertise areas and background that helped us solve this issue. Our inspector did a fantastic job. He was out there every single day, for day in and day out, and that's not normal for our staff to have to do that, and so it was a great deal of time. But we learned a lot through the process that can be applied to other similar circumstances and lessons learned. So that hopefully we can every time I think we get a little bit better at that process. In bringing properties into compliance. And our prosecutor did a wonderful job also coordinating the case and working with the property owners' attorneys as well.
It was amazing because once that happened, it seemed like things just started to click, and
it did move
results
forward quite a bit more quickly. And certainly with that big of a cleanup, I mean, the owner ended up spending, I think, a little over $400,000 to clean up that property. We were debating whether or not the city would be ended up in the end having to clean that up, and it was great that the owner ended up taking care of it. And so those are some of the things that you weigh when you're deciding when to go into the court process and when not, because once you enter into that, you're kind of on a different timeline. And so a settlement agreement in this case was great because it afforded them some time to get it taken care of, but we had a clearly laid out plan with an end date, and they were able to meet that for the most part, so that's great.
I always want to remind people, though, they can do it less expensive than a government can. And the city does it, it's going to cost you more. So it really is to their benefit to do a settlement, clean it up, and resolve the problem right from the get-go.
Absolutely, agreed. Yeah, I think the earlier the better in every case. In general, would be the case. You know.
Yeah, because people are very conscious of how their neighborhoods look, and everyone wants them to look well because, one, you live there, you want the pleasant environment, but it maintains your value in your home. And I'm always worried on some of these properties, fire hazards, especially this going into the heat of the summer, keeping that grass short. But one of the challenging things we've had recently, what do you do when you live next door to a hoarder?
Hoarders are complicated cases, and so we get a lot of those cases. So the best thing to do is to call us too. You know, the earlier we know about it, the faster that we can get notice. But when we can address things, it tends to spill over into the backyard and the front yard typically, and so we can address those. I think the earlier we get notices out on those and make contact with the property owner to try to bring those into compliance, the better. We can also work with other agencies to try to bring in. You know, oftentimes there can be mental health issues and other issues that lead to this behavior, and so we work with other departments and other agencies to bring in those resources as much as we can and offer that help. In addition to then taking care of the trash and the litter and the storage and things like that, we do end up sometimes abating those cases. So we'll come in and do what's called a court-ordered abatement, where we can abate the backyard and the front yard if needed, if they're unable or unwilling to do it themselves. And so we have several options. Each one is kind of unique, but we work with the owners usually to try to get as much help and assistance as we can to bring those into compliance outside of a court process if possible.
I always think it's remarkable that the people in your department are so creative to find solutions, because although it sounds like it's all fits in different categories, it's not. Almost each property is unique, and your staff is exceptionally good at patience, education, and going through the process to help people, not just go in and slap them with a ticket or a fine, whatever, but to really try to help them understand the process and correct the situation. So I thank you very much for all that you do and your department does, and I want to thank you for being on the show today, because this is an important topic that we hear every day in the offices, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you for having us.
That's all the time we have for this month's On the Issues. If you have any questions or comments about this show, call my office at 602-262-7444 or visit my website at phoenix.gov/District 1. See you next time on The Issues.